YouTube, I have a very special unboxing today because I have a very special guest. Paul Thorpe is here with me today. He's visiting from the UK, and I said, hey Paul, why don't you jump into one of our unboxings? And of course, a few special pieces to show you, so stay tuned. Now, Paul, I don't know if you know how these things go. I actually don't know what's in here.
Okay.
There may be a piece or two that I may have personally bought, and that I may know, but for the most part, I just open up these boxes and kind of hope for the best.
So my guess is your staff normally put the best stuff in that they've bought, is that right?
No, it's whatever comes in through shipping on a daily basis, really. And sometimes we collect a couple of days worth of stuff. For the most part, it's like a daily thing. They did leave a few Rolexes in here, and look.
A modern classic.
Yeah. So when this watch came out on the Jubilee band, everybody was like up in arms. They said they'd dress the watch down, and then I got the watch in person, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is a really, really good looking watch.
It's beautiful.
So in my opinion, like we always talk about things like gold medals when it comes to specific watches, right? And a lot of the times people will say, okay, well, the gold medal for Richard Mille is the RM1103 all gold. Royal Oak would be the all gold Royal Oak on a bracelet, right? Sort of like that gold medal, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to Rolex, to me, it's always been the presidential, yellow gold, champagne dial, all big yellow gold watch. But to me, this is a close second. And on that bracelet, to me, that's like a second best gold medal.
Yeah, I mean, the Jubilee bracelet on that watch for me just gives it like a back to the future look. You know, it's like, yes, it's a vintage look on a modern watch, a vintage look with a modern take, if you like. And I just think it looks, like I say, a modern day classic. It works, especially with that two-tone, the bezel. The way they gradiated the bezel, I just think it's an absolute winner.
You know, and I've always said that whoever is a designer out there for Rolex, they have a hard-ass job because for the most part, all Rolexes look the same. And it's like, they have to sit there and work with the most minimal changes. Minor tweaks, either putting on a different existing bracelet or a bezel or something like that. And yet, they knock it out of the ballpark every single year.
Imagine being given the job of having to improve on perfection each year.
Exactly.
Tough.
It's tough. And listen, Rolex is #1 by far, always has been. So it's like, what do you do? I always felt like the Rolex designers have cobwebs in the corners of their offices because there's really not much to do for them. So the Batman and the Batgirl have slowly but surely taken over the Submariner because look, going back to the days where you were a watch dealer, you knew that quintessential, taking the Daytona aside because the Daytona is in its own realm, that quintessential steel watch was always the
Submariner.
And as of the last few years, I'm seeing more and more the Batman, the Batgirl, the 𝗵𝐶s taking over the sub a little.
What's #1 for you, for your customers? The
Sales-wise, it's going to be Batmans or Batgirls.
Yeah, which one would you say?
It's tough to say because
6 to 1.
I would have to pull the report.
Yeah.
But I am seeing a ton of sales coming in from either the Batman or the Batgirl.
What do you prefer yourself?
You know what the funny part is? Every time I get one of these on an Oyster, it's like, okay, I like the Batman. Then it comes in on the Jubilee. Oh, I kind of like the Jubilee.
Yeah.
So I like the Batgirl. Honestly, not too big of a difference. I always felt that the Jubilee dressed the watch up a little bit, where the Oyster toned it down and made it more sporty.
A little bit more, but there's no wrong answer, is there?
Exactly. We've seen prices get a little bit lower during certain seasons, a little bit higher during other seasons. It's all on demand on that particular moment, and that's how the watch industry should be. You know, not what we've seen in the last few years.
I'd like to go back to when I started and be able to buy a few at those prices. I know that.
I remember trading brand new, pre-ceramic obviously, I remember trading brand new Submariners, wholesale price on that was $3,600 to $3,800 brand new, and I would wholesale them for $4,000 and retail them for $4,200 to $4,300.
Very nice.
Those were those. Well, listen, everything is relative. And speaking of Daytonas, again, people are still paying a high premium for these Daytonas. Yes, they're not 50, 60,000 like they used to be, but nevertheless, they're still hovering around that $25,000 to $32,000, $33,000 price range, depending on how new they are, depending on how clean they are. This is the one question where people don't stand with me because most people prefer that in a Panda. They sort of like the Panda look, where I'm actually probably the only that prefers it with a black dial. And the reason for that for me is just, I feel like I get more watch because the bezel sort of blends in with the dial.
Yeah.
It makes the watch feel a bit bigger.
Yeah.
It makes the watch feel a little bit bigger, and I think personally, I think it makes more of a statement. But I think people stick to the Panda dial because when it comes to recognizability, that Panda dial stands out.
Do you think that's what it is, the recognizability?
Because that Panda dial stands out so much. Yeah. It's like people will go for that. That's why historically the Panda dial has traded about 10% more than its black counterpart, where again, from an aesthetics perspective, personal opinion, I like the black dial first.
Beauty of the brand, again, no wrong answer. They're just both fantastic.
It's insane what Rolex can do. It's like they change the dial and the world goes fucking crazy. I love that, and that's powerful. You know, that's You know, we often talk about, you know, what's the flex? Well, Rolex, there's a reason there's a crown on every box and on every watch. They're the king, for sure. Adrian would say brown boxes, he likes Patek over AP, but this is my favorite.
This is going to be more for me.
Speaking of gold medals, right? So here we are, and again, this is one of the later versions. So the Royal Oak brown dial, gold subdials, these things to me, so Adrian calls this the greatest blank canvas that Gerald Genta has ever created. If you think of a plain Nautilus, if you think of a plain Royal Oak, it's the greatest blank canvas because there's nothing they can do to that watch to spoil it. And I remember going back before the hype when they made this thing in a frosted rainbow skeleton. I'm like, what are you doing, AP? That's insane. And guess what? It still worked.
It works.
They're trading at ridiculous premiums. Those watches are still in the $500,000 price range, 3 times its retail value, even after the correction. They were all the way up to like $850 at one point.
How can you not look at that and just fall in love?
Exactly. And the way the brown works and the way the subdials work, again, it's sort of like Rolex. It's like minor little changes to the original, and just everything about this watch works with the exception of walking through certain parts of London.
Exactly. But one of the things, again, with the AP bracelets as well is the way they're engineered and contoured.
Yeah.
They're almost, when you twist your wrist, they're almost diamond set. They just have this look that,
it's the bracelet in itself is, and again, you know, I have a original 5402 Royal Oak where this came from, and oddly enough, even though the older stuff is still flimsier, you know, the metal may not be as good, even on the gold pieces, and over the time and age, you know, they sort of get duller. But the concept, the actual design, they've stayed so true to the original design. They have not veered off. That's why I said it's timeless. It's here to stay for a long time.
Royal Oak for you or offshore? What's your own personal preference?
So actually offshore for me, and I'll explain why, because it's more personal from when I originally started in the business, and we kind of evolved into cornering a very small market. Early on, I realized that there's an opportunity to corner the market or create a market on limited edition offshores, starting with the 𝗴𝗲𝗆𝗄𝗃, the end of days, then the T3s, and the Schumachers, and so on and so forth, and the 𝗴𝗿𝗆𝘀s as they sort of came through. And I kept buying those things up, driving my own prices up. So like the first 𝗴𝗆𝗄𝗃 I bought for $13,000 or $14,000, sold it for 16. Then I'm like, wait a minute, am I really going to pay retail? Because retail at the time was $17,900.
Yeah.
Am I really going to pay retail for this watch? Yeah, I paid retail. I sold it for $2,000 over retail, then 22, all the way out to like $35,000 at the peak of the market. Of course, the '08 crash had something to say about that, so a lot of the stuff went down in value. But till this day, a lot of these limited edition offshores, they hold value over their original sticker price. The end of days that's trading in the mid 20s to high 20s or 30s even, depending on condition. The original retail price was $9,800. You know, AP did a lot of things first and did a lot of things best, whether it's use of materials, whether it's ambassadors. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think, was one of the greatest ambassadors that ever lived, is still living in the watch world. So to me, it's, what do you call it? It's just, it's something more personal, plus aesthetically, how much attention they paid to some of the details. If you look at the 𝗴𝗆𝗆𝗄𝗃, all the racing details on the watch, to the button pushers, the rotor in the back, even the strap was set to mimic the stitching of a suit. Like everything was just done very well. You just don't see that often when people put out, you know, limited edition. The other company that does it well till this day, believe it or not, is everybody loves to hate on them, is Hublot. If you look at some of their limited editions that they make, they pay so much attention to some of the little details that speak to you when you pick up the watch. And if you're buying that watch because of an ambassador, be it Arnold Schwarzenegger, be it 𝗴𝗆𝗆𝗄𝗃, 𝗴𝗏𝗆𝗀, whoever it might be, it should speak to you. Manchester United Hublot watch, the King Power back, I don't know, that watch was out more than 10 years ago. Remember what they did is they took this humongous, this was bigger was better, they took a 48 millimeter watch, obviously that had the logo, right, the Red Devil and so on and so forth, but every one of the hour markers was a single glass tube that had a piece of grass from the field of Manchester United, dry frozen, and put inside those tubes. Like, if I'm a Manchester United fan, and I'm buying this watch and I'm seeing this, it's making me tingle, right?
It's for them, yeah. I get
exactly,
that,
and that's what AP did really, really well back in the day, and I think that's what stuck with me. Well, speaking of offshores, here's one of the newer divers.
Beautiful.
And what I love about this, obviously, we have the easy change.
And how easy is it to do that? It's just so quick and easy.
It's just, I mean, this from back in the day, and you guys have seen me do this on video multiple times. You take the older offshore, you have the male and the female end, so you have to have. I have the little stand with the screwdriver on the one end, so you have to put the watch in, and you take the other screwdriver and you unscrew it, and then those things would snap if you don't know what you're doing. This just made life easier.
Perfection.
But this diver is, it's the colors. What they did there with the colors, and again, it's taking the original diver. Now, the original diver, if you remember, started with the 𝗴𝗵𝗃 limited edition. That's how they started, because AP was really good about testing out the market by spitting out a limited edition. Because what they really needed is they needed something lower than an offshore, because all the offshores, they were chronographs, right?
Yeah.
So the sticker price was much obviously higher. So they wanted something that was closer to the Royal Oak line, which was historically cheaper. So they sort of came out with this in between. It's still an offshore, but it's not a chronograph, therefore it's a little bit cheaper. It was under $20,000 originally when they came out with them. They used the Wimpy limited editions of 300 pieces. They did 300 in steel and they did 100 in rose, if I'm mistaken. They tested the market in that, spit out a few more limited editions. There was a red one, an orange one. They called it a scuba back then. And then they said, okay, we can do this. And that's when they came out with the plain black one. And they continue on still. And they're
How
still very
do they
successful.
sit in terms of sales with the offshore and the Royal Oak?
Right in line. They're right in line. One of the best sellers from the offshore line is actually that they made a limited edition for Japan that looks like the LeBron.
Yeah.
Same color scheme, same metal, same materials. That one is doing extremely well. It's trading way over its retail price, which is sold one in the mid 40s, I believe. But the newer ones that they're doing extremely well is because they're doing really, really well with different colors. And the colors on this, they're just amazing.
Their palette is just spot on it. The color range right across the board.
I mean, they've done this in orange. They've done this in, I mean, they're not afraid. AP is definitely not afraid of color. This is probably from a line that's considered to be a dog, right? Like the Millenary line never took off, much like the Jules line or the 𝗴𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗃 line. But with this particular watch, I think they knocked it out of the park because AP knows also how to make pretty watches.
Yeah.
What kills me about some of the other companies, and this is Starry night, as they call it, right? So what kills me about these watches, or about some of the manufacturers, is that oftentimes you'll see a brand, I won't mention brands, let's just say, go across the Swatch group. They take a men's watch, they make it smaller, they slap a diamond bezel on it, voila, you have a ladies watch. No thought process, no design process, no real, effort, if you will. Now, you go into houses like Piaget, they have the high jewelry line, as they call it. They make some amazing watches, but those are amazing based on the fact that they're made out of a lot of Piguet diamonds and so on. It's very gaudy. But this, if I look at this, I can simply say from the dial to the case, the way the diamonds are set, it's just a pretty watch.
And I bet that offers great value for money now.
Of course, because now, this watch I think originally retailed upwards of $80,000, and you're buying it at a fraction of a cost now.
Yeah, I understand what you mean as well, because you know what? From a distance, there's a touch of Piaget about that. For me,
what's that?
A touch of Piaget.
Yeah, absolutely. In the dial design,
yeah.
Absolutely. But look, at the end of the day, these companies have been around for so many years. They all, you don't know who's copying off of who.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's very, very tough to say at times. I'm going to jump to a Patek 5726, and I think that when it comes to the Nautilus range, right, this is probably going to be towards the bottom of the totem pole simply because it's on a strap. The one thing that Patek Philippe has not been able to do successfully is to make their strap sports watches as popular as the bracelet. You ask anybody on a 5726 on a bracelet versus a rubber strap, 10 out of 10 will tell you I want another bracelet.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, same thing you mentioned about the Royal Oak. Look at that bracelet. Look at the quality of the bracelet. Look how it's designed. Again, this is Genta design. So he still designed that beautiful bracelet, which has been copied by many.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And because the Nautilus bracelet is actually a lot easier to mimic than the Royal Oak bracelet. There's a lot more that goes into making a Royal Oak bracelet, I feel like. But it's the recognizability, because the Nautilus outline or the Nautilus shape, it is recognizable by far, but it's a lot more recognizable when it's on a bracelet than when it is on a strap.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, there are people that would only buy these on straps because of the comfort level, because this watch on a rubber strap is a lot more comfortable.
Ultimate comfort, yeah.
It's a lot more comfortable.
Now this I actually haven't seen before, I've got to be honest, I don't think I've held one of these.
This is going back to your ages.
Yeah,
this is when you were a watch
exactly,
dealer. So listen, for the 25th anniversary, Audemars Piguet decided to come up with these watches. They did it with Wandering Hours. This is 150th birthday of Jules Audemars.
How many of these were they made, do you know?
So this particular one, I believe, is not limited, and I need my glasses for that. So some of these were limited, some of these were not. Now this is a D serial, so this is dating this watch back to about a little over 20 years ago. So this is number 48. And these editions for the birthday of 𝗴𝗿𝗲𝗄𝗃, the birthday of Jules Audemars, and it was just, it gets
so maybe it's 150?
No. So this guy, what makes this watch particularly rare is, well, for one, you notice there's no crown, right? So the winding crown is actually in the back of the watch. You can see it here, which is, to be honest with you, is not very comfortable.
Yeah.
But what it does aesthetically on the wrist is it just gives
it gives it
it's a very clean, it's a very clean look.
Can you feel that winder much on the?
No, you don't feel it at all. No. You don't feel it at all because you do have the lugs sort of lining up here. But what you often see is those with just a regular dial, and they have a variety of dials. So they do a salmon dial, they do a white dial. I very rarely see these in a skeleton dial. This is probably the second, maybe the third time I've seen one of these with a skeleton dial.
When I see watches from this period and compare the price to some of the modern hype stuff, wow, value.
Right. So when you start looking at something like this and saying, wait a minute, I can get into this tourbillon, okay? I can get into this tourbillon for less of a price than some of the popular Royal Oaks.
Yeah.
That's when your mind starts to click. But I think now that the hype has sort of died down and people are starting to realize that there's so much value out there other than hype, people are slowly but surely coming back there. That's why we're seeing an increase in sales of some of the older brigades. 8 out of 10 buyers, it's about the flex first and everything else secondary. But even though it's a shame to say where you can bring a value with a watch such as that, but that's not a watch that's going to turn heads at a club. A Richard Mille will. Right. Last but not least, I always save some special things for last, and
I definitely haven't seen before.
Okay, so well, this was a limited edition, but a name I can't pronounce. We could probably call Marco in here because he speaks French. So this was made for 150th. Speaking of 150, this was made for 150th anniversary of Cartier. They did this in 2 versions. They did this in the gold and did this in platinum. So this is a Jumphour Retrograde minutes, limited edition to, you guessed it, 150 pieces, and guess how much that tank trades for?
Go on, tell me.
About $150,000.
Wow.
Right? And the reason for that is that's probably the rarest tank that exists today. And I've talked about Cartier collectors in the past. Cartier collectors are some of the most low-key, as we like to call them, collectors, very quiet. Because most of those watches are very quiet. You can find a tiny little tank that looks like a $2,000, $3,000 watch. It's actually worth almost $100,000 due to its rarity. It's for those that know. That's the first platinum I've seen in this office, probably, and I don't remember how long. You know, and it's a shame too because
what year is that?
So how old is Cartier today? Let's find out. So Cartier is 176 years old, so therefore that was made for 150th anniversary. That's 26 years old.
26 years old.
There was one that was sold on. It was one that was sold on a bracelet. It fetched some ridiculous amount of money. I don't know if this was.
Is that platinum?
Yeah, that's the platinum on a bracelet. So that watch on a bracelet is about as rare as it's going to get. You will see these. You will see these in auctions often come through because it's one of those things. So they actually have this watch on Chrono on a platinum bracelet. I think the guy's asking $250,000. We did sell it to a client. It took us almost 6 months to find one. Very rare because the collectors that buy them, they don't sell them because this is like the holy grail.
I was going to say they're going to be pleased as well because to me it's unworn.
Oh, that's a very clean watch. But these watches are like the holy, like every brand has its own holy grail. Like for me, when it comes to AP, the holy grail is going to be an A serial 5402. The lower serial, the better, right? And there's, Patek, a lot of the collectors, the holy grails at 3700s, the original Nautiluses, or, 2499s, or if you want to get really, really expensive, 1518s. But this is the holy grail for Cartier. It doesn't get any cooler. There are some watches that are in line with this price-wise, but I believe that's the one. And with that, I want to thank YouTube for tuning in. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Subscribe to Paul channels if you're not a subscriber under Paul Thorpe. We will see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.